Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have with me Frank Tumminello. Frank, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you, Tom. Really looking forward to this discussion and providing a bunch of education to those in need to learn about this new law called the Corporate Transparency Act and the BOI report.
That's a really interesting way to phrase it because I think I podcasted about this at least 18 months ago. To me, it seems straightforward, not old hat, but just one other form of registration. I'm a lawyer. I've got several of my own corporations. And I was at a business conference, I think within the past month, and somebody stood up and said, "Has anyone heard of this new law, this corporate transparency?" And I just put my head in my hands, like, "Yeah, I have." But I say that as an anecdote because I think there's a lot of people who have not heard of this. Lawyers, entrepreneurs, small business owners, family business owners. I think it's relatively straightforward, and it certainly doesn't offend me how this was passed, why this was passed, or what it requires. But we need to talk, and you and I need to get this word out to those people who haven't heard of it. So I'm not sure if this is the right intro or not, but let's talk about the Corporate Transparency Act and its business implications.
Yeah, certainly. You make some great points there. Certainly, lack of awareness is pretty omnipresent if you look at the fact that this law has been in effect for nearly a year with just 62 days left in the year has really flown by. Only about 15% of the 40 million companies that need to file by the end of the year have filed so far. So I think the reason why 85% of folks haven't filed is because they haven't heard about it yet. And we're doing our best to complement the limited efforts of the federal government, who hasn't done a ton of education or awareness on this law. I think they've done what they can or what they believe is necessary, but there's still quite a bit of people in the dark, and we want to change that so folks don't get blindsided by significant fines for miscompliance.
Frank, this law, or excuse me, the CTA came out of the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2020. And I think the purpose of the law was absolutely appropriate. But at this same business conference I was at, I heard a lot of misinformation about how the federal government's going to use this, intrusive, Fourth Amendment, and a lot of other things that I think are not true. Could you explain or give us your understanding of the purpose of the Corporate Transparency Act and how it will be used?
Certainly, this is an anti-money laundering regime. So effectively, throughout the globe, most major economies have some level of beneficial owner or ultimate beneficial owner disclosures required when forming any legal entity. The U.S. has always been a very business-friendly nation, and thus, for really up until now, many states you're able to form a legal entity and use it to your full discretion without ever having to disclose who owns the business. Effectively, you can form these entities fully anonymized in certain states, and the US government has no insights as to who owns the business, controls the business. And a lot of times that that dynamic or lack of reporting or is to the benefit of criminals, and they're able to leverage these shell companies to either avoid taxes or launder money or fund other illicit activities. And over time, as the world kind of had elevated their reporting standards and the US decided not to proactively elevate theirs, more and more the US had become a safe haven for financial criminals. And thus, the US took it upon themselves to pass this law, elevate the reporting standards, effectively get every business in the United States that's not already reporting in some capacity to the federal government on ownership. So largely private companies never had to report that before. Now they will. And the US government is going to have a database of all of private companies, who owns the business, who are the controlling decision makers in that company, and ultimately use that database to better police the financial system here in the United States and hopefully prevent a lot of the money laundering and tax evasion and illicit activities that fortunately go on in our country up until this point.
Could you explain what the beneficial ownership information reporting is and what it entails?
Yeah, of course. So the BOI report, as the acronym, becomes more and more prevalently used, also known as beneficial ownership report, is form that is required now by small businesses, basically any legal entity to be disclosing a BOI report with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, also known as FinCEN, which is a government agency of the U.S. Treasury that likely is not familiar to many business owners today, but not too dissimilar from the IRS in some capacity, in the sense that they're collecting information on businesses and looking to enforce those who are out of compliance. So ultimately, the BOI report contains a variety of information on both the legal entity or company that needs to report, and then also those beneficial owners or individuals that have either an ownership interest of 25% or more in that entity, or substantial control of that entity, senior officer, C-suite executive, controlling boards, etc. The form itself for a business will require the legal name, the DBA if applicable, the jurisdiction of formation, business address, and the EIN or tax ID number of the business, and then also requires the controlling or beneficial owner information individuals. I think it's an important piece to note that beneficial owner must be an individual. So folks might find that there's entities that own entities. We have to ultimately find the pulse, as some say, with respect to each beneficial owner of any company, individual, not entities. So beneficial owners now, they have to disclose on the BOI report first name, last name, date of birth, residential address, an actual image of their government issued ID. So that could be a passport, driver's license, or other tribal organization document. And then also the unique identifier of that ID, the numerical code on that document. As you can assume, this is some pretty sensitive PII type info that is very sensitive. That ultimately, folks go to disclose, they should be all the proper precautions to assure that these don't compromise in the reporting process, because ultimately, if you have several beneficial owners that need to disclose this information and they're all sending it via email or text message or in any other manner, it could easily be compromised. And ultimately, law wasn't built to help cyber criminals, but it's trying to prevent those types of nefarious actors. Yeah, and that's a little context on the report. It needs to be filed with FinCEN, and the deadline's coming due just 62 days away.
Frank, one of the other things I heard at the business conference was along the lines of the following. Oh, that's unconstitutional. There was a case about that. We don't have to file anything. Could you maybe disabuse any listener of that notion?
Yeah, it was interesting in the March timeframe when these federal court cases started popping up, where plaintiffs were bringing forth cases within the district court to challenge the constitutionality of the Corporate Transparency Act. Those district courts were ultimately looking to make decisions as to whether or not these cases would hold up. Effectively, certain districts passed determinations that this law could be deemed unconstitutional, but then quickly the DOJ appealed those decisions. The Alabama district court that got elevated to the 11th Circuit Court, which heard oral arguments about 2 weeks ago. And or actually 3 weeks ago now, time flies. But nonetheless, it's pretty evident when listening to that recording of that oral argument that the judge was assuming that the plaintiff's case was extremely far-reaching based on summary judgment. And not an attorney, I'm not a federal judge, but based on the narrative, it seemed that the ruling was not going to go in favor of the plaintiffs, which in that case was the NSBA, which is an organization of about 60,000 businesses that initially got deemed exempt from having to report till these court cases ran their course. But ultimately, at this stage, all other businesses certainly need to compliant, and probably behoove the members in the NSBA to also just go ahead and file, because it doesn't seem like the Supreme Court or any other federal court for that matter is going to rule in favor of them. Certainly not before the end of the year. And then subsequent from that, you saw district courts within Oregon and most recently in Virginia deny kind of the preliminary injunctions of these plaintiffs who are trying to bring forth similar cases. So those just outright got denied by those federal judges and those jurisdictions. So thus far, if you want to use kind of those three cases as precedent, it doesn't seem like the CTA is any bit unconstitutional. In fact, quite constitutional based off of judges thus far.
Frank, so let's change the focus to our government and specifically FinCEN. Have there been any updates from FinCEN around the CTA or the BOI that you've come across in the last few weeks or even months?
Certainly, we've had the benefit of interacting with FinCEN quite a bit throughout the rollout of the Corporate Transparency Act. In fact, I actually text with FinCEN from time to time, which is something I never thought I said I could do. FinCEN has been doing the best they can. Very nice people over there. I want to have some credit because they don't have an easy job by any means, but they're doing the best they can to respond to FAQs that more recently are coming out on a somewhat periodic weekly basis to address some of the top kind of most popular questions that they're getting in their support email bucket. And actually recently, as of yesterday, I believe they actually offered an extension to those who were in FEMA zones that were impacted by the storm, and kind of gave them a 6 month extension to file their BOI report, which I think is more than likely something that will start to kind of creep in, that FinCEN's realizing not that many people have filed so far, and they might need to offer some type of safe harbor or extension to help more awareness kind of run its course, and then also more time for folks to get their information gathered and into the government portal, or kind of working with firms like ours to file the information directly with FinCEN. But ultimately, FinCEN did say in late September, when we last spoke with them, that they would be establishing a national marketing campaign to bring more awareness. Fortunately, thus far, we have not seen any significant pickup in those efforts. Right now, there's about 50 to 80,000 reports getting filed any given day. But if you kind of take that amount and run it out till the end of the year, it's not going to get us to the 40 million number of folks fully compliant. So it's more than likely the lion's share of folks will be out of compliance by the end of the year, unless there's kind of an amplification of filing that goes on, or perhaps some more significant marketing efforts. But I raised my hand, outright, and asked the gentleman from FinCEN who was answering a bunch of hard questions that day. And I asked him why they waited so long to start this national campaign. And he simply said that we're doing the best they can, and they're underprepared and have never done this before. And I understand what that feels like as a business owner, to do stuff that might be new or kind of outside of your domain. But once again, I hope that more efforts come so that more folks can get compliant.
Frank, what are some of the common pitfalls you're seeing that businesses face when filing their BOIs?
Yeah, certainly. I think a lot of folks either have EINs or don't. FinCEN's very adamant about needing to ultimately file the report. A lot of folks are curious around whether this is a one-time filing and be done with it, or is it an annual filing, or kind of how is it possible to maintain the information because of this 30-day window that's required. So effectively, there is an initial filing. It does require all the information that we addressed earlier. That being said, all that information needs to be maintained, where if there's a change, for example, a change of address or a change of name, or a passport ID expires, that information must be re-reported to FinCEN within a 30-day window, which is a pretty tight window. And I just don't think folks are really realizing what that's going to entail to kind of keep that information fresh with the federal government. That's another component, is just having a process in place to really maintain the data. And fortunately, our platform does a good amount of monitoring of the data, and proactively helps folks stay on top of it. But those are some of the primary issues that we've seen, or kind of misconceptions, whether they need to file or not. A lot of folks think FinCEN only applies, that this law only applies to financial institutions or larger businesses, because they've never had to report to FinCEN before, which is actually the opposite. FinCEN created this law really to figure out who owns the smaller, kind of more private companies. So that's probably another one that comes up pretty frequently.
That really leads me to the next topic I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive into, which is file forms. And how was this created? I'm going to ask why, but I think I probably know the answer to why. But I'm going to start off by saying your pricing is very competitive. So, anyone listening, I hope they will check it out. We're going to put it in the show notes. But could you talk to us about how file forms helps either a lawyer representing a client or an entrepreneur or other business owner comply with the CTA and the BOI?
Certainly. So we have a critical set of features that certainly help streamline this reporting process for anyone, whether you're a mom and pop business on Main Street, all the way to a national law firm or CPA firm, or even a family office that might be managing a massive portfolio of. And the way we're able to streamline it is by having several critical features that allow you to upload and aggregate the information in an extremely secure and efficient manner. So, for example, if you're a CPA or an accountant or even a law firm for that matter, and you have an internal database that already has a lot of this company or owner info in it, you're easily able to export that information, copy and paste it into a template that we provide, an Excel template, very easy to navigate, very intuitive. And then you're able to drag and drop that Excel template into our portal directly and pre-populate a dashboard in the file forms experience that really allows you to organize and invite other folks to upload their ID, for example, or complete the filing if, say, the practitioner doesn't want to press submit to FinCEN. We also have a direct integration with FinCEN via API. So we're able to integrate with FinCEN so that the data that is uploaded in that kind of drag and drop, or even just the manual input experience, that data is pushed securely directly to FinCEN. It's never touched by a human outside of the users themselves. And for that matter, we're also able to provide a transcript and confirmation number that's stored in file forms for any reference in the future, which is a really nice experience because ultimately these changes will happen. The data is stored in our platform. So if, say, a name changes or an address changes, very easy to make a single change and then refile. And as opposed to on the FinCEN portal, which effectively is a static PDF, which you need to kind of start from a blank slate each step of the way, we're delivering a very modern, intuitive TurboTax style experience to do this efficiently. Most people take less than 10 minutes to file a BOI report with us. And you're really able to kind of run the process on behalf of your clients if you are running a firm that's serving small businesses. And you have a lot of permissions and controls in place so that you can really manage the risk around what you want to do, from helping your clients to kind of filing end to end. And our platform really creates a revenue opportunity as well, giving folks the opportunity to proactively serve their clients' needs while also spitting up the ability to make a new revenue stream. So we've seen some CPAs with just 100 clients start a $40,000 revenue stream just by selling BOI services. So our team's on standby every step of the way as well. We have a live chat bot manned by our team. So I think that's another big value add that FinCEN has once again dropped the ball on, is live support. A lot of people are finding this to be a little complicated. They have questions. There's unique ownership, unique questions around who's the beneficial owner, do I need to report, or what does a trust have to do, or things like that. Our team's on standby to help you through that process, which ultimately is something the government is not able to do.
Could you share with us any success stories or even testimonials? I hate to use that word, but comments or feedback you received from your customer base about file forms?
Yeah, certainly. We've had a variety of different perspectives, everything from working with law firms to CPAs to family offices to real estate investors to virtual mailbox companies and the like. And generally speaking, I think folks are really appreciative of the ability to upload information in an extremely efficient manner so that they don't have to manually input a bunch of data that, quite frankly, if you're entering it manually, is extremely error prone. The ability to upload, use that drag and drop feature, say exporting from your tax prep software, for example, and then having beneficial owner used across many entities so that you don't have to upload their information every step of the way. That's driven some pretty significant success stories. We have some partners that have built a significant kind of multi-million-dollar BOI filing service already, which is crazy because it's still, we believe, in kind of the second or third inning here, and there's quite more opportunity ahead there. So we've seen some really impressive success stories so far, everywhere from the legal community to the CPA community to the folks just purely serving SMBs and in different communities of interest. So I think at the end of the day, it starts with education, then it's education with a little bit of urgency given the nature of the deadline, but just having a solution to provide to really make this easy and provide peace of mind. Because at the end of the day, this stuff is a little intimidating. The fines are significant, $591 a day for miscompliance, up to $10,000 fines from a monetary standpoint, and even jail time on the line. So I think providing that peace of mind is super important so that folks can get back to running their business.
Let me pick up on one thing you said a little bit ago about the chatbots, because you're really one of the few in this space that I've heard talk about engagement with customers or clients through the chatbot. How has that experience been on the customer side, or at least any feedback you've gotten? And why did you decide to use that as a service engagement for your client base?
Yeah, I think it's extremely efficient way of helping someone in the midst of their filing process. A lot of times folks don't have any questions at all because we built the solution to be pretty intuitive, and there's tooltips throughout to explain defined terms that are pretty prevalently used in BOI reporting, but not necessarily common nomenclature for those that aren't CTA nerds, if you will. So the chatbot is something that we felt that is real time feedback for us to know what's kind of troublesome perhaps for the user, but then also a way of delivering quick answers. And I just want to be clear, this is not an AI chatbot. This is an actual chatbot that's manned by our team. Our customer service team is able to answer those questions quickly. And I think it's just been extremely efficient and probably becoming more and more popular way to engage with folks rather than taking a phone call, et cetera. We're able to answer questions a little bit more efficiently in that manner.
Franklin, before we get to the end, I have to ask you about your podcast because you told me you have one. Perhaps not as many episodes as you'd like, but go ahead and tell us the name of your podcast and where listeners might be able to find it, as well as if our listeners wanted to connect with you or find out more about file forms.
Yeah, of course. If you want to reach out to our team and learn more about our technology and the various ways we look to work with business owners or practitioners or investors for that matter, just reach out to us at info@fileforms.com for our more general inquiries. And you can even reach out to me directly, frank@fileforms.com. I will say my inbox does get a little crazy, so you might get a quicker response at the info@fileforms.com address, but I'll do my best. But yeah, certainly also have a podcast, and we've had some amazing guests on our podcast historically, built extremely strong relationships with the legal community. For example, Melissa Wiley was on there. She's at Lowenstein. She's been a complete CTA nerd from the get-go. Bill Quick from Polsinelli, he's been on the podcast. He's actually just wrote a book on the Corporate Transparency Act. I requested a signed copy, I think, in the mail. And just a bunch of other CPAs and business owners, and other folks, just to provide a real world perspective on what's going on, what are the pain points, how file forms can truly solve those points for you so that you can get back to growing your business. So that was our intent, kind of building the podcast and get the word out so that folks can have content that resonates with them specifically so they can spearhead this compliance requirement, hoping they get back to running their.
Well, Frank, I wanted to thank you again for taking the time to visit with me today. This has been a fascinating exploration. I'm not sure how to characterize this. It seems so straightforward to me. It seems like, at least in the compliance world, people have known about it. Yet here we are, and I just went to your website 62 days out, and only 15% of US corporations have complied. So obviously a huge need for more education, a huge need for more engagement. And I wanted to thank you for being a part of that discussion.
Thank you so much, Tom, for the opportunity to educate and provide solutions to folks in need. I think as a bootstrap founder owned and operated business that also had to file a DOI report, we certainly can relate to business owners and also practitioners. My co-founder, Kenneth Detman, he's a CPA by background, was formerly a managing director at a top 20 firm in the country and ran their global tax and compliance group. So we really try to put ourselves in the shoes of our clients and our partners. I want to emphasize as well, we have everyone from SMBs that can use our platform all the way to referral partners if you prefer outsourcing DOI and collecting a rev share, all the way to workflow solutions, FileForms Pro, if you want to kind of be more hands-on with your clients. So we do have a BOI reporting solution for everyone. We're happy to help you think through what's best for you and your firm. but it's certainly a mission creating awareness on a new law that impacts the entire country. And we're a mission-driven organization looking to spread the word as far as we can so that folks can avoid these unnecessary fines.